Welcome from Las Vegas, Nevada, the host city of NAB 2014. We're here on the 45th floor of the Trump International Hotel. This is Cinema 5D on the Couch, presented by B&H, the professionals source, Vitech Videocom, Tools on Air, and Zeiss.
So welcome back. That's the second part of the fourth episode of On the Couch. Now we're here with Canon and Sony, competitors sitting on the same couch. That's Peter Yapsley from Canon Europe and Fabienne Pisano, now I have it, from Sony Europe. Welcome. Let's talk about your new products. What's new from Canon?
Well, we got three main things on the booth this time. In terms of cameras, we've taken a step back to the more traditional camcorder line, and we've introduced two new products, the XF200 and 205. So they're going to sit between the existing XF100 series and the 300 series. Those products will carry on, but we've got the 205 and the 200 in the middle, and the same as our other lineups, those two cameras are just distinguished by the fact the 205 has timecode, Genlock and SDI output, so for multi-camera or small studio, you've got the choice there. The 200 is exactly the same camera. And the concept of those is really to try and marry all of the best features that we've introduced in our cameras over the past couple of years into a really, really compact and mobile, versatile body that's really easy to use, lightweight. So it's a very small camera, but operationally it's completely designed from scratch. It's really, really nice to use. There's a whole host of useful features in there.
So what's new compared to the XF100 and 105?
So we have a 20 times zoom lens now in the 205. Still a 30-inch sensor, but it's a newer version, so it's more sensitive, better dynamic range, really good dynamic range for a small camera actually. We've got the Digic 4 processor, of course, and then in terms of recording, we've got the MXF 50 megabit 422 codec, so broadcast quality codec onto CF card, but also it's got SD card recording in MP4. In 1080p, and you can shoot at 35 megabits in MP4, so you're actually getting better quality than even normal AVC HD. But you can also shoot in a lower resolution to the card, to the SD card, while you're shooting HD to CF. So you've got that option of capturing both at the same time if you need a quick turnaround from those small files. As I say, the design is completely new, so we've got a 3-ring lens control. We've got a rotating hand grip, it's very comfortable to use. We've got an OLED screen rather than an LCD and a much improved viewfinder, much larger and higher resolution, so it's really easier to use. And then we've also got built-in Wi-Fi and Ethernet in there as well for FTP transfer or for remote
uploading
control.
Stuff to Facebook from the camera?
Exactly.
Is it for controlling?
Yeah, so it's Wi-Fi remote control from a web browser, but also for FTP file transfer as well. And there will be actually a proxy streaming mode, a very low bit rate when you immediately need to save to another device. So it's really a whole combination of all sorts of different factors. You know, it's got a new image stabilizer system, it's got our existing instant AF system, even 4-channel audio now, because that was some of the feedback we heard. So the whole thing was really about recognizing that we've launched a lot of exciting products in the Cinema EOS line over the past couple of years, but there's a whole host of people that still just need practical video tools to shoot on.
It's taking the small camera seriously, basically.
Exactly. It's really trying to provide the best small camera that we've made so far, especially for people who aren't expert shooters. There's still a lot of people capturing video out there now that aren't necessarily trained as a cameraman, camera operator, and sometimes those people need a bit of help, and that kind of camera is great, great for them as well as for the experts. But then in the cinema side, on the Cinema EOS side, we've taken again a bit of a departure, and we've introduced our first Cine Servo zoom lens. So this is a 4K lens designed for large sensor cameras, but completely redesigned from the ground up to be operated like a broadcast lens, an ENG lens, effectively. So it's smaller than in form factor than the existing lenses, with a servo drive unit on the side, so it can be operated on the shoulder. But it also means you can operate it in a studio environment with zoom and focus demands.
And I think it's 17 to 120 millimeters.
Exactly, that's right. So 7 times zoom, it's lightweight, it's a really nice piece of glass, fantastic optical quality, and of course it's matched with our existing Cine lenses. So
it covers Super 35 or full frame?
Exactly, yep, Super 35. And you can actually detach the drive unit as well. So if you want to shoot in a more sort of cinematic production, then you have the option to put follow focus and other accessories on it. Then you can just put the drive unit back on, pick it up, and off you go. So that's a really exciting step for us. And again, that's really come from what we're hearing from customers, from broadcasters, from filmmakers.
It is true. I mean, I shoot a lot of documentaries, and I think that's exactly the kind of focal length you need for documentary, because you don't want to change. Often you don't have the time to change the lens. So far, I mean, I looked a lot at, Engineer were one of the few lens manufacturers that had lenses which are kind of in that, field. But this one sounds quite exciting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing, also maybe in the context of this conversation, is that we have two versions of the lens. So we've got EF and PL, and of course, EF is supporting all of the Canon cameras, and lots of people are using EF mount. But the PL version is the first to have the Cook eye technology interface. So you can actually power the lens and get lens metadata from some other cameras. So it's really intended as a tool for the industry. It's part of Canon Cinema EOS lineup, but we're hearing so much demand for these kind of cameras. Broadcasters and filmmakers are moving to large sensor. The idea is to give them an option from Canon.
But don't you find it ironic that this lens maybe work better on an f5, f55 than on the Canon camera because of the power issue? Because you can't power the lens from the battery of a C300, but you can power it of a D-tab from a f5, f55.
To be honest, we don't find it ironic at all, because we're just trying to offer a tool to the maximum number of people. And obviously we've developed this after we introduced the Cinema EOS line, and those cameras are fantastic and they have the capability that they have.
And you can swap the mounts, right?
A trained service facility can do it. It's not a trivial job. It's not an end user job.
Yeah, but it is possible.
But it is possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a really exciting thing for us, and it's very much, there's a big story about lens on our stand this year, and about Canon's heritage as a lens manufacturer, and maybe refocusing a little bit more on glass, because we all like to talk so much about cameras, which are of course very important, but for us it's all about glass as well.
True. I mean, in the show we recorded earlier today with Thijs, that was exactly the issue, because people talk so much about cameras, especially on this show, and the weird thing is people forget that the glass is even more important. When somebody asks me what to buy, when I have like €1,000, what should I spend it on if I want a new camera and some glass? Never buy the more expensive camera with a kit lens. Rather buy a cheaper camera with a better lens, because it will stay with you much longer. What about Sony? What's new from Sony?
All right, so there's a lot of new stuff at NAB. I guess that the one I would select for the scope of the conversation now will be, first of all, a new handy camcorder in the XD-Cam lineup. So this is the file-based family of camcorder in Sony. The name is PXW X180. It's an handy camcorder with 2 slots for S/S Pro Plus, which is our new high bandwidth memory recording device. It's a 25 times zoom lens camera with 3 3/3-inch sensors. And as the rest of the industry, we see the evolution towards the necessity of having networked wireless camera. And of course, this one get the Wi-Fi connection. Wi-Fi connection for file transfer, Wi-Fi connection for camera piloting, so getting an app, looking into the camera, what are my clips, sorting them out, logging metadata, all this kind of new behavior that is happening in the market. Nice new tools like the possibility of the NFC connection, taking a smartphone, just typing it into the camera and connecting them like that without any other parameter to enter. So yes, it's this one that is complementing this application. We see it used by videographers, like interviews like we do today, but also it's more and more used into the broadcasters, where we sell also our high-end shoulder-style 2/3-inch camera, and more we see a clear balance towards 50-50 usage between the classical shoulder mount ENG operation style and the handheld. So it's complementing this family. So this is the first one. Also, you probably heard also about the mirrorless Alpha 7 now moving to the S version with 4K recording. So this is what there's a lot of people. There are far more people on the booth queuing up to this part that I would have thought for a high-level show like NAB. I'm surprised. And so it's generating a lot of interest also by the key rental house that usually buy some 20K, 40K package for cameras, but they're really considering it as an additional tool, crash cam, not even B cam, crash cam for some 4K shooting. So this one is interesting. And the last part, which is closer to my heart because it's my direct line for Europe, is the cinematography F-series, which are now benefiting from a full brush up at NAB. The strategy in Sony is to try to limit as possible the launch of new product, even if the market is super demanding. There was a huge demand since 1 year of the F-series were launched for a dedicated shoulder style, big sensor documentary camera. And we resisted to this. And more than launching a new camera, we launched an adapter that will host the F5 or the F55. So it's a shoulder adapter that will be an accessory, and this accessory will bring you everything that you want or you used to have on a digibeta camera typically, or a TV cam camera. That means wireless audio, that means shoulder pad that you can move forward and backwards to balance the zoom lens. That means all the classical controls of white balance, gain, starting the camera, changing the audio level, everything you need to be alone on a shoot with a camera on your shoulder, but then it's a big sensor 4K camera.
So you also announced that the F5 is now upgradable to an F55.
Oh yes. So
how does that work? Is it a hardware upgrade? Or?
Yes, it's a hardware upgrade. The major difference between the F5 and the F55 lies into the sensor. The F55 having this super wide gamut global shutter sensor that will avoid all the all the rolling shutter issues and all this. So this came clear that a lot of people made the choice initially of the F5 for cost reason. Now looking forward to get this feature of the global shutter plus internal 4K recording with XAVC, without having this external RAW recorder to get a full 4K workflow. So instead of them putting that on the gray market and getting back an F55, we're now allowing this camera to get back to us in our labs and be changed on the sensor side and also internal boards. So this will be the cost of this, of course, we're going to calculate so it match as best as we can the price of an F55. Mm-hmm. That means that will be transparent for any F5 user
so you will
to upgrade
probably
to
end
F55.
up not paying so much more if you did.
Well, I think the price gap is something like 10K, and
so for the upgrade, when you have the upgraded F5, you will end up
it
having paid almost the same as the F55.
It should be the same cost as an F55. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and the last one that is worth mentioning yet as well is the ability by IBC timing to also have an hardware upgrade that will be chargeable as well. To extend the codec portfolio to Apple ProRes and Avid DNX. And this is meant to streamline the ingest and the process, both into some production house that have typically some Final Cut Pro and servers, or broadcasters that own their own F555 fleet and usually are very widely used Avid system.
So that will be a hardware upgrade as well?
Oh yes.
And is it 4K ProRes? So all the flavors, all the resolutions?
No, it's HD. It's the ProRes for 2K.
Okay.
For 4K, we are really committing to our XAVC format that is now quite widely interoperable into the main NLE and server manufacturer. So we're really capitalizing on this XAVC codec, which is, by the way, very open codec. You can play it in VLC.
Mm. You also mentioned the A7S and that you were surprised by the response that it had.
Well, I'm surprised here at NAB, which is National Association Broadcaster Show. The crowd around this, and it's not only videographers and cinematographers, really people seeing it into a full chain. Basically, it's fitting into a chain, and even myself, I was not I was not anticipating that.
I have to say I'm not surprised at all because people want small cameras, and I think Canon has been very strong on that part with the C300, C500, 1DC, and that's where Sony, from my point of view, needs to catch up because still I love the F5, F55 and all the features they have.
It's not the same anymore.
The form factor is like more the traditional box-shaped form factor that we have come used to for ages.
Of course.
When cameras were still eating tape, you know, like there is a big market, I think, for small cameras, and there's a lot of uses for them. In small rooms, in special environments, you are just faster with small cameras.
Of course, you're aware you can't do exactly the same thing in terms of dynamic range, in terms of recording format. It would record 4K, but in long up. Won't be able to sustain the 600 megabits per second of what an S/S Pro Plus can do, but of course.
So the Sony A7S is quite exciting, very small 4K camera with a very good codec. If you have to record externally, but the XAVC-S is very, very good. Is there anything from Canon where we can, you know, we've been waiting for a small mirrorless Canon camera with a quality that can match the DSLR range for a while now. Is there anything on the horizon, or nothing you can talk about?
Well, naturally, nothing I could talk about. But I mean, no. What I would say is, in the video arena, particularly, you know, we've been quite focused on introducing the Cinema EOS series and expanding it, especially from the lens point of view. So we're only just over 2 years into the cinema business, if you like, or the large sensor business. We've got 4 cameras, we've got 11 lenses. There's really a lot you can do with those, and that's taken a lot of our focus. And we've also introduced some traditional camcorders in that time. So, you know, naturally there's a sort of a limit to what we can do and how quick we can do it. But we're always looking to see what the next step is, and listening to what people are saying at these shows and what kind of products they want to use. And I think, you know, what we've done with Cinema EOS, for example, shows that in the development from the 5D particularly. And we'll keep doing that. The CN 7x17 times is another perfect example. So we'll keep going. I mean, the other, let's say, thing that we've introduced that did also come from, in part from user feedback, really, is this idea of autofocus, which we were talking a little bit about earlier on. So it's well known that, especially for less experienced users, focus is a very difficult issue with large sensor cameras. And with the new dual pixel CMOS AF technology that we have, we've been able to get around that issue somewhat and give the users a bit more help. So in the EOS 70D that we launched fairly recently, the DSLR camera, we introduced this technology for the first time. But we have actually implemented it in the sensors in the C100 and the C300. It's just at the time those cameras were launched, actually the system wasn't fully developed and it wasn't ready to go. But we're now able to offer a feature upgrade to the C100 to get the dual pixel CMOS AF activated, and that means you can have autofocus with any Canon EF lens with electrical operation. So that's more than 100 lenses, and that's all kinds of interesting stuff, you know, all the way from the fisheyes to the big zooms. That's coming to the C300 a little bit later this year, I think, hopefully next month. And that's a service upgrade, so you have to take it into a Canon service center or send it back to Canon. There's some calibration and some updates that need to be done for that, but it makes shooting with those cameras fantastically easy. It's not perfect. It's not autofocus as people would know it in, for example, an XF305. It does still need a bit of thought and a bit of work, but it's extremely effective, and the technology to be able to do that in a large sensor camera is really impressive, which I think it's going to be really useful for a lot of people.
It is nice that, I mean, in general, the autofocus from us professionals, we never liked it because we are used to it not working properly. It's this typical that you think that you know from older, you know, mostly, like CCD cameras where they keep looking for the focus point and just don't find it. And I think it's the new, I tried the one on the C100 and it works quite well. I mean, of course, as you said, it has some issues, but I think many of them stem from the lenses because the lenses are made for stills.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there were always technical limitations in the past, and some of those have been overcome. But really, it's another option. depending on how you're shooting, you were just talking about small cameras, big cameras, it's not going to be for everyone, but with a camera, particularly like the C100, we designed that to be a single shooter's camera as far as we could, or for small crews. So adding that kind of feature is going to help those users. And to be honest, when we announced it, so many people were excited and interested that there was just great demand to have it in the C300 as well, which surprised us a bit because we were expecting more of this kind of sort of traditional cinematographer's feedback of I hate auto, I want everything manual. But actually, there's been a very positive response to the idea of putting it in the
Well,
300.
you know the hype about handheld stabilizers like the Movi and all the copycats and all this. And on these things, it's very useful to have. That's where I used it on the 70D and the C100 on the Movi, because you don't need remote follow focus. It's an extremely expensive device. Of course, it has its uses, and if you need critical focus, you still need to use one. But if it's just documentary style shooting with one of these gimbals, it helps you if there is proper autofocus, and you still want to be able to have large sensors, and so far the two didn't go together.
This is quite an interesting topic, I think, as well, though, because there's maybe a question as whether you do need the large sensor on those devices if you're not going to go for a very shallow depth of field, because actually these kind of small, let's say more traditional camcorders, which have a lot more automatic functions and are easier to control, especially with the Wi-Fi remote control these days, are a good option. Not for all circumstances, but I think are sometimes not always considered by people these days. The kind of default is to go for that large sensor.
I agree to a degree, but there are two things that are problems. First of all, the light sensitivity. Very often, with the small cameras, you're just limited in
of course,
what kind of light you can
depending on the
choose.
situation, yeah.
And the second one is simply these gimbals like the Movi can only take cameras that are about this long. And many of the smaller cameras are very long because they have a built-in lens, and it gets much more difficult to actually be able to balance them on the rig.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on the device, but I think also we're seeing so much stuff shot on copters these days as well, and in those situations, obviously there are more challenges with the large sensor. It's a bit tougher to shoot in some situations, and it's good, I think, that there's still all those choices out there for people to consider, and that kind of thing is also somewhere where the 205 is a good option, because you've got the Wi-Fi control, you've got SDI output, so you can record on a high bit rate if you want as well, with the big zoom, with all the auto functions as well. So just kind of having that palette of things for people to consider and trying to make it as easy as we can with the technology that's there.
Mm-hmm. So you both, I don't know how long you've been working in this industry, I guess for a while. We've seen it develop immensely over the past 10, 15 years, and it just turned upside down. And there's a lot of new market for video that hasn't been there before. With regards to the products that you have, where do you see, what are the major trends that you can make out with regards to what kind of stuff people shoot? Is it changing? Or do cameras need to be more versatile? And what has changed compared to, let's say, 10, 15 years ago?
Right. So yeah.
A big question.
No.
Big answer, please.
No, it's. I think you already. There's big part of the answer in your question already, but I've been in this business for 13 years myself. Okay, and what I reckon as the major move will be the fact that some segmentation. Sorry, it's a bit technical marketing word, but it's really like that. Some markets of the production that were apart, like cinematography was really apart. And I remember 10 years ago, 35mm was nowhere near to be attacked by anything, because it was really the holy grail, and still is in some case, but was really separated from the rest. It was really a big gap between cinema application and TV, with very different tools. The same, you had all the corporate video shooting, like what we are doing today, and then broadcasters shooting news gathering with quite different tools. Okay, and really there was also a big gap here in terms of quality, sensitivity, stability, everything you wanted. What I reckon has happened over these 10 years and accelerating is the fact that cinema industry, news gathering, mainstream TV production, corporate videos, you see them merging, and you see some tools in Canon, in Sony, in all the key manufacturers that are now so versatile in terms of technicity, in terms of pricing, in terms of ergonomy, in terms of worldwide knowledge that you are bringing, for example, with your website or sharing the knowledge that, oh my God, there is some tools that you could use for, I exaggerated, not all the application, but you start to see some cameras that you could almost use for any different market. This is a clear trend that has been very visible. It's really concentration of the technology that could then, with some tools, apply to so many different usage.
And I think the extension of that, it's maybe the thing we've seen particularly from our point of view since the 5D Mark II, is the availability of all those tools is letting more people shoot. So it's not necessarily, I think, the case that people are shooting different things because of the digital tools. Of course, the tools are better now, but those cameras and lenses that are out there suddenly became more accessible and more available, so more people could shoot the kind of content they wanted to. If you gave them enough film and a crew for free, whether they would have shot different content, I'm not sure, actually. It's just they were able to do it, whereas before they didn't have the option.
Yeah, and I think it democratizes filmmaking. I mean, you see so much talent now if you just go on Vimeo or Google or YouTube, where people with really hardly any means produce something amazing that a lot of people
the barrier before the barrier to really do something quality, working on shadow depth of field, working on resolution that could be displayed on big screen. I remember when I started, it was really, there was a threshold, and before you could be in, it was a long way. And it's true that today it's much democratized. That said, are we seeing much better stuff?
Maybe better and different are two different questions.
Well, we're seeing much more, for sure. We are also,
for sure,
that's why we are seeing
the content is
yeah.
exploding. I mean, the content is exploding worldwide. You look at the newspapers. All of them now having a website with some video additional. So for sure, this is also evolving. The content is really exploding.
So, where's this all headed? Do you have any idea where do you think what are people demanding the most?
The crystal ball question.
But I think it relates to what we've already discussed, and you look at what Canon have been doing and what other companies have been doing, and there has been this desire for more developed and sophisticated digital, large sensor digital cameras and the lenses to go with them. So I think we're going to see more and more people still wanting to shoot with large sensors, right or wrong, whatever for the circumstances. So there'll be just some development there, and that's continuing to happen from many companies. And we see that especially in broadcast as well. The kinds of camera that we brought into the market with Cinema EOS, we weren't necessarily thinking TV business at the outset, but actually those kind of cameras are really widespread now, and that's going to maybe happen more and more. But also then there's a question that's coming up more and more is what is the right kind of glass in those environments and those situations. With the best will in the world, Canon's EF lenses, they're fantastic quality, but they're not the easiest thing to shoot video on. So I think there's a conversation about where the cameras go and a conversation about where the lenses go, and obviously they're tied together. But
I agree. I mean, it's funny you called them Cinema EOS, but you see I'm a C300 owner. I shoot a lot on the F5, F55 as well for documentaries, but for other documentaries I used to see my own C300, and I very often get called up from TV channels because they specifically ask me, they know that I shoot with larger sensor cameras, but I shoot for traditional TV channels. They have their own cameraman, but for the larger sensor stuff, they come to me because they want it. But for all kinds of stuff, even sometimes news, but mostly documentaries, it's everywhere now. And especially the C300, the F3, the F5, they are everywhere now in TV, and it's really caught on. So I think what you're addressing with the zoom rocker lens, the 17-120, what I think only Fujinon had a lens before like that. Sony has a lens that for the F5, F55, but it's relatively slow. I don't know the name, but it's like a huge range.
Yeah, no, it's the we don't have the zoom rocker style.
There is there is a Sony lens. I don't recall the name.
It was the former one that was
Yeah.
with the F3 series some years
Yeah.
ago. But what we provide is the PL mount 6 package of prime lenses.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big market for these kind of lenses for these type of cameras, and I think you're right. I mean, it's all growing together, and the differentiation between cinema and TV is blurring slowly.
Wow. Okay, I think that the place where it's still very valid and very visible is the lens in the lens domain. But the remark I was making, it was much more on the camera itself. Truly, the lens, what made a cinema lens, is still very particular yet.
It's true, because the budgets are not there in TV.
Yeah.
But I mean, technically, it's growing together
good.
because all on big sensors.
But I mean, I think the thing as well is, especially coming from a European perspective, is, you know, there are different stages of development in the market in different parts of the world, and not everybody is at 4K RAW yet. You know, not everybody is talking about delivering content in Ultra HD. Some people are still thinking HD is the next
Or
step.
720p.
Exactly. So, you know, I think it's certainly something that we're aware of. So, of course, we try and keep bringing, you know, new products which are at the forefront and driving things along. But at the same time, like the XF205, there's still this big pool of people who are just, let's say, not at the front of the curve. They're still using the tools that have been around a while, and so we need to cater to them as well, which we'll continue to do, of course.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. I think we have to wrap it up.
All right.
We'll see each other on the show floor, and we're looking forward for new exciting products from Canon and Sony.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. That was episode 4 of On the Couch. Thanks to all our sponsors. First and foremost, B&H, who supplied all the equipment we use here. Vitek Videocom, Zeiss, and Tools on Air. Thank you, and see you in episode 5.